on the clock. Earlier today, it was Lewis Hamilton who was the fastest in his Mercedes, but Max Verstappen didn't take part in the session because there were 8 driver replacements because of the free practice 1 rules with younger drivers coming in. So he sat out the session and watched on, and now he will get in the car and see what he can do around this fabulous circuit. The sun just starting to set, as the sun definitely sets on this season. As always, it is the season closing event, and Jack Nicholls should be a good one, if anything, from the last races is to go by.
Should be interesting, no doubt about that, because especially after free practice with the Mercedes first and second, as you say, we get to see a bit of Verstappen in this second practice session, and can he get involved in the fight? Well, can Verstappen get involved in the fight? Will he be leading the fight and the Mercedes chasing him down? Was that Mercedes pace real? Are things going to change now that the track temperature is dropping? I think we've got a lot of questions, and it doesn't seem, or didn't seem, like it would be a sort of easy Red Bull victory based on free practice 1.
And we've got a good Lewis Hamilton still looking for his first win of the season. Last time out, it was George Russell who won in the Mercedes, and he finally got his congratulatory, celebratory hug from the boss, Toto Wolff, who missed of all the races to miss. He missed the last race, so wasn't there for the celebrations as Mercedes got their first 1-2 of the season, and George Russell got his first ever Formula 1 win. John Watson, former F1 driver, just to remind us, what did it feel like? What did it feel like for you to win in Formula 1?
Bit too old to remember, Jenny, I'm afraid.
Come on, dust off those brain cells.
Long time ago. But
you've been keeping your brain fit by doing Sudoku or something, surely?
Drag it out of me. Say it again, what was the question?
What's it like to win a Formula 1 race, John Watson?
It's a great feeling, obviously. When you win your first race, I think it's the most important race in your career. And just think back 1 week when George Russell won his first Grand Prix for the Mercedes team. Now, he could have won a Grand Prix 2 years ago when he stepped in for Lewis Hamilton, who was unwell that weekend. And only for some issues which never really got fully explained, he didn't take that victory. And what a disappointment it must have been for George Russell on that day. But did he ever make up for it last weekend? Fantastic race.
It really was. And a dominant display, I think, from George Russell as well. But let's see what happens this weekend. As we said, we've got 8 drivers coming back in. So getting their first taste this weekend will be Mick Schumacher, Zhou Guanyu, Latifi's back in at Williams, then a Stroll coming back in at Aston Martin, Alonso back in for the Alpine team, Norris back in for McLaren, Sainz for Ferrari, and Verstappen for Red Bull. All the drivers, all 20 of them, went out for a meal. Was that the thing to do, John, by the way, when you were driving? Did you go out for driver meals? Did all of you get together?
It may have occurred occasionally.
You all had a big sleepover one year, didn't you?
Well, we had a sleepover due to the driver's strike in South Africa. But I think mostly you'd go out with your teammate, maybe much more than might happen today. And of course, as regards to the nationalities, the French drivers, French teams always would go out for dinner. You go into a restaurant at any Grand Prix, you couldn't get a table because of the entire French journalists, television, drivers, mechanics took over a restaurant. I don't know whether it's the same today or not. So the concept of everybody going out and having a meal, first question is, who's paying? Well, I believe Lewis paid last night for that meal, and a generous offer by the 7-time world champion. And that was in celebration for this man's great career. Sadly, he's leaving Formula 1. That is Sebastian Vettel. And I don't know what this man is going to do with his time. He's going to have so much free time. Maybe he'll become the next German Chancellor. No, not Chancellor.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Anyway,
I wondered where that was going for a moment.
Well, he's taken an interest in many social and humanitarian issues over the last couple of years. So I think there's a lot more we're going to see from Sebastian Vettel, not necessarily from a sporting perspective, but he has got a marvellous opportunity for the remainder of his life to be a part of the public interest. And even his nationality is German, although he lives in Switzerland. But you never know, he might become a German citizen one day in the future.
Right, cars heading out on track. They're heading under the circuit in this very unique pit exit. So let's cross over for commentary of free practice 2-2, Jack Nicholls.
Alex tweeted in an hour ago saying, I think they need to turn some of Watty's settings down on hashtag BBC F1. I'm concerned he might over-rev. But we've come straight out fighting at the start of free practice 2. Love it.
Over-revving. Listen.
And Lando, you can. It's purple C7.
Full throttle. And then a bit more.
So for those of you wanting to sync up, we have got 59 minutes and 19, 18, 17, 16, 15 seconds left on the clock. And a lot of drivers have gone straight out. Joe, Vettel, Sainz, Norris, Bottas, Schumacher, Ricciardo, Latifi, Magnussen, Alonso, Gasly, all heading straight out onto the circuit. There's just the engine cover being reattached to Lewis Hamilton's car before he heads out onto the track. A reminder, the quickest time from earlier on was set by Hamilton, a 1 minute 26.6. So that is the benchmark time from earlier. And Tony is tuned in after that great episode of Bargain Hunt, which apparently featured Dick and Dom, I presume as contestants. Was it like a celebrity bargain hunt? Anyway, for those of you outside of the UK, it's a show where I can't be bothered to explain Bargain Hunt actually, but what you can listen to also is the new podcast available on BBC Sounds, and it's about the sport's strangest crimes, and it's all about 2007 and Spygate and Alonso and McLaren and Ferrari and all of that. So you can have a listen to that sort of box set for Spygate on BBC Sounds, and you'll be able to find it. And I think Andrew Benson contributed, so there may be some truth in it. Therefore, 57, or it might, yeah. I'm sure it's great. Honestly, I haven't listened to it yet, but it only came out yesterday, and I've been busy doing this. Into the first corner comes Carlos Sainz as the sun begins to set, and it was interesting actually in Austin because some of the drivers saying, I think it was George Russell saying that the sun setting here isn't too bad because you have a lot of stands and you have a lot of, you know, the hotel, so there's not many corners where it really affects you. But when
I have a very weird feeling under braking there at the brake of 6 and 12 without changing the pressure. The car is just losing bite.
But there's enough shade around Abu Dhabi that it's not too much of a distraction.
And also, in this part of the world, when the lights go out, they go out very quickly. So we're starting in, there's still enough light around to not need any artificial lighting around the racetrack. As Carlos Sainz now comes down to complete his first flying lap. Well, he's midway through the first flying lap, and understandably, he's gone purple. But in the middle sector, he's only got a green. So somebody has gone purple in that middle sector. And that person, I'm just looking down to see who it might be.
Vettel.
It is Vettel indeed, surprisingly. I was going to say Vettel, and I checked up and I thought, no, can't be Seb getting purple at this early phase in a free practice session.
Someone tweeted in a little earlier on, which I thought was amusing. It was Paul, said, surely this weekend is Auf Wiedersehen Vet, which I quite liked. I thought that was quite witty.
It is. It's a very good play on that TV series from many, I was going to say years ago, now decades ago.
Yeah. It was a Children in Need special on Bargain Hunt. They raised £1,800. Kaylee says, I think Jack, Jenny, Jolien and Andrew would make a very interesting episode of Bargain Hunt. That would be quite fun.
Well, if you could explain to our audience what Bargain Hunt is, then maybe we'd agree
Basically,
with you.
They go to auctions and buy things really cheap for like £20, so and then hope to sell them for £30.
You really did know what it's all about then?
Oh yeah, I watch Bargain Hunt a lot.
Ah, okay. Too much time on your hands, Jack.
That and Homes Under the Hammer.
Nearly lost it in 3.
Danny Ricciardo coming through turn 3, that flat-out sweep to the right.
Yeah.
So he says, do we need to make a change? He's saying, yeah, but that was quite a big moment there.
Very quick snap, and did well to hold it because that's a fast-ish part of the circuit. Leclerc has gone quickest, by the way, anybody who's watching or listening.
Nearly lost it in 3.
Do you think we need to make a change?
Yeah.
That track evolution.
Yes, and also remember, qualifying will be at a similar time of evening tomorrow night. So this is important for those, particularly those drivers that handed over their cars to the 8 young drivers who did that first FP1 session. So Charles Leclerc, 1:26.045. just out of interest, I know that everybody listening to this will know that the pole lap from last year was set by Max Verstappen at a 1:22.109. So we're about 4 seconds away. And that time will come through track evolution and just getting accustomed to lappery around the Yas Marina circuit here in Abu Dhabi.
So Verstappen has gone quickest on the medium tyres then. So Leclerc, Ocon, Verstappen, Perez the top 4, all on the mediums. But Leclerc a second faster than Verstappen at the moment. Russell.
For how slow that outlap was, I was amazed by the grip we had. That was like really good grip considering what we normally do.
And he now gets onto the brakes into the chicane at turns 6 and 7, through the left and the right, and then on the run down towards turn 9. And
this is more like a qualifying session. We've got cars running slowly on the 2 quickest parts of the racetrack, all looking to find the optimum opportunity to go and do a lap, a clear lap on a fresh set of rubber, and not have anybody else interfere with that lap.
Russell through the middle sector is half a second slower than Charles Leclerc through the middle third of the lap. The first sector here is basically one corner where it's just the left-hander at turn 1, and then it's flat out all the way down to the first sector split. And then most of the corners, the majority of the corners, coming in the final sector, which is where Russell is now, into the final corner.
My pedal is a bit soft. It's not amazing.
Okay, copy that. Thank you. We can discuss after the session.
That's a lap that isn't quite respective, I would say, for George Russell. Still that engine cover being attached to Hamilton's car. He's still in the pits. He is the only driver that hasn't been out on circuit yet, Lewis Hamilton. Ricciardo back in the pits after his wobble at turn 3, but yeah, Hamilton the only one still in the pit lane.
Well, there's certainly work continuing around the back where the engine cover is just being replaced, and they then put as a form of helicopter tape that they cover all the joints in the bodywork just to give that an additional aerodynamic gain. As we are looking at Nicholas Latifi, and this is the last race for the Williams team, so I don't know whether he will have a celebratory dinner. Maybe he will celebrate this being his last race for the team, but I suspect he's rather sad that having done 2 years and not making the progress that he would have wished, and this is his last Grand Prix.
I wonder if he got a little toast or something at the dinner, whether they all did a goodbye to Seb but also Nicky. I don't know. Popular man in the paddock.
Yeah, I mean, he's a genuinely nice guy, and maybe it was a tough ask to come into a team that's still trying to reconstruct itself, to find itself in a position to return to the heady days when they were winning races and world championships.
Jenny.
Yes, it's quite a busy year for driver movements, really. Vettel's last F1 race this weekend, Latifi's, as you said, Mick Schumacher also departing, and Daniel Ricciardo, all of them going. And there's a lot of driver movement as well, with Alonso going to Aston Martin, Gasly across to Alpine, and then Sargent coming in at Williams, De Vries. That's Hamilton going out, by the way, in the Mercedes. De Vries in at AlphaTauri, and Piastri in at...
The track is either really quick or these parts are very good. Without my mistake, it felt.
Down turn 3.
Yeah, the car's still got a lot of vertical movement, which actually is called porpoising, but not in the aggressive manner we saw earlier in the season, but still a lot of vertical movement on the Renault. And the exit out of turn 1 for Fernando Alonso, well, there's no point in him trying to continue to do a representative lap. He just needs to back out of it and then regroup and start all over again.
So Leclerc still quickest on the 1:26.0, 8 tenths quicker than George Russell. Hamilton's on his outlap now on the medium tyres, and Leclerc has just done another lap which is 4 tenths slower than his previous best. Now that the best have gone from those softs, from those mediums. I didn't realise only Michael Schumacher has won more consecutive world titles than Vettel. Vettel winning those 4 in a row.
Yeah, he did 4 consecutive titles, and then went off to Ferrari and failed to win when that was his ambition, to win at Ferrari, but never worked out. And since then it's really been 2 years at Aston Martin, which has probably been even more disappointing than his period in Ferrari.
Danke Seb adorning the Aston Martin this weekend. Jenny?
Yes, I've just spoken to Mercedes just to ask if there was any issue for Lewis. He was slightly later going out than maybe some would have expected. He said, no, everything's absolutely fine, but George Russell did go out earlier than Lewis. He was doing development work this morning, so he went out earlier in this session to get that extra bit of running. But I found it interesting that they're doing development work in free practice 1 earlier today and still managed to set the second fastest time.
Yeah, indeed. Good effort. 49.5 minutes to go. Leclerc, Ocon, Russell is the top 3 at the moment. Sainz has just improved in his first sector. Verstappen is improving in the middle sector. The sound you can hear is that.
So time to gain on entry of turn 5, turn 9 and turn 11.
13 under the bridge of the hotel, and then he's got 2 more corners to go. Flat out through 15. Down into 4th gear and on the power out at 16, and he goes up to 3rd quickest then. Verstappen, 0.3 slower than Charles Leclerc, still slower than Esteban Ocon, who's in there in 2nd position. Russell in 4th, Sainz in 5th, Perez, Gasly, Joe, Bottas and Magnussen, the rest of the top 10 at the moment, but lap times keep improving. Hamilton has just come through the 1st sector and has backed off in sector 1, so maybe a mistake at turn 1 potentially for Hamilton, but he's backed off in the 1st sector. Latifi's just improved to go up to 17th place. Perez improves to get ahead of Russell and go up into 4th position. Russell's just done a cool down lap and is now pushing again. Done a 17.8 in sector 1. A 10.
Well, yeah, if we're stuck on time, if not, I would do a double cool. One of the reasons I got in sector 3 again. Just really
dissects the 2 main straights, got the back of the car loose, and he then balanced that on the steering and the throttle. I mean, a lovely image, but not a lot of good for the tyres or for a lap time.
48 minutes on the clock. Jenny.
Yeah, just down here, just down at McLaren, one of the guys has decided to hold up one of the cooling devices, which is like a leaf blower with dry ice attached to it. Hold it up in the air and it's just had a little snow shower, but I was standing in the wrong place at the wrong time, so apologies. I got a little snowed on. Wouldn't expect that in the middle of Abu Dhabi. Just let you know, Daniel Ricciardo leaving the garage now. He had a little wobble out there earlier, came back in just to have a look at it. He's now going out in his McLaren, and apparently Helmut Marko has kind of announced without speaking to the PR team, I would imagine, that Daniel Ricciardo will be the reserve driver next season for Red Bull. So it's not an official thing, but it did come out of the mouth of Dr. Helmut Marko, so you kind of feel like you have to go in that direction.
Yeah, I think he said it on Sky Germany or something, didn't he?
Oh, okay, you're going to credit them. I wasn't.
Why aren't you going to credit them? Oh, sorry, I didn't realise we weren't crediting Sky Germany.
No, you can go.
Am I not allowed to say Sky Germany?
I think you can say Sky Germany. Can you watch Sky Germany?
I've never watched Sky Germany. I wouldn't really know what they were saying.
Danke said. Really?
Yeah, exactly. Whoa, Hamilton on the brakes, coming into the chicane, halfway between the 2 straights, and he's been badly balked by Magnussen, and drives past him and does a little... What's going on?
I mean, that was pretty bad. The only good news is Lewis Hamilton is currently on that yellow sidewall tyre, which is the medium compound here this weekend, so it wasn't a simulation of a qualifying lap, but nevertheless.
Any reference on the time lap would I need to improve? How much?
Okay, so Esteban's best lap is at 26.4 at the moment.
Is he out for a Friday evening drive, oblivious to traffic all around?
Yeah, frustrating that.
Worse than frustrating.
His first sector was a couple of tenths shy of Leclerc's. So Hamilton has obviously now backed off in the middle sector as well. Charges up the car. He'll go again for a 3rd effort now on those medium tyres with 45 minutes and 37 seconds left on the clock.
Well, he's got a Red Bull directly ahead of him, and he's got a Ferrari running him down, so he's got to get on with the programme as he now exits cleanly out of turn 1, up through the quick flick to the left and cut back, and you're just building speed at such a rate.
Try to take the curb in turn 6 apex.
Very high indeed.
And that is a personal best for Hamilton in sector 1. 2 tenths shy of Leclerc, so pretty much matched what he did previously. Vettel jumps up into 10th place in the Aston Martin. Hamilton opens the DRS and comes down into turns 6, 7 and 8. No traffic this time around, and little slide after hitting the curb, but nothing too dramatic. What's his middle sector split going to be? And it is slower than Leclerc by 0.6 of a second. Verstappen, meanwhile, is on a quick lap.
Lewis is still on that medium Pirelli tyre. Did he start on the reds and go to the yellows? Not quite sure, but right now this is maybe more about what will the car do at this time on Sunday. More information gathering.
A little bit plodding on the brakes into turn 6. Copy, understood.
Verstappen is actually out on the softs. He's the first driver out on the soft tyre, so he's done the fastest first sector of anyone as a result. He's coming through the chicane on the back straight now, and then getting on the power down to turn 9. And what's he got after the middle sector? Charles Leclerc is quickest at the moment, but Verstappen is up on Leclerc only by 0.2 of a second. But considering he's put the soft tyres on, I would have expected maybe a little more than that. But still, most of the corners coming in this final sector for Verstappen.
Well, remember, Max Verstappen didn't run FP1. That car, his car was driven by Liam Lawson. So Verstappen is effectively trying to do 2 sessions in the space of 1. So he's shortcut the time he wants to get onto that soft red sidewall tyre, quick through turn 15, and looks to see how much more time he can pick up before he comes across start-finish line.
So he's 0.6 quicker in the end, Verstappen, a 1:25.449.
My brake pedal is very bad.
Understood, Max.
0.6 quicker than Leclerc, 0.9 quicker than Ocon, 0.9 quicker than Sainz, 1.1 ahead of Russell, 1.2 ahead of Perez, 1.3 ahead of Hamilton. But again, first driver out on the soft tyres.
And he picked up time in each of the 3 sectors.
My brake pedal is very bad.
Understood, Max.
Brake pedal is very bad. So not sure if that means it's long or if it's not responsive, or who knows.
Yeah, but you need to understand is when you say bad, is that slightly bad, medium bad, or diabolical? But that's a conversation that will then be taking place once the car's pushed back to the Railboot garage, and the team can get to work at it as they currently are doing on his teammate's car. But Sergio Perez, 1.2 seconds at this point. Now, both maybe on different particular strategies or different runs, and I would expect Perez's time to quick.
I mean, just from the short runs, this tire feels a lot better than the soft, even on consecutive lap times.
Was a bit nervous when I heard Pete Tong was hosting it, but he was brilliant. So there we go. If you needed any more convincing to listen to the Spygate series, Jamie has just provided it. George Russell is improving on this lap. He's still on the medium tyres that he's been on for 7 laps now, so they're quite old, these mediums, but he is finding time. A couple of tenths adrift in sector 1 of Verstappen, and also quite a few drift in the middle sector. But as I say, he's on old mediums. He might get up into 3rd place here ahead of Ocon, comes across the line, and he does. 8 tenths away from Verstappen, and a couple of tenths adrift of Charles Leclerc there for George Russell. So, decent lap.
A good lap, I would say, bearing in mind the amount of mileage that set of tyres has done. So he got green, green, green in all 3 sectors. There it is. George Russell now, he's backed off. He's done the lap he wanted to do, and he will make his way back. Maybe he wants to go again, or maybe decided now it's time to come into the pits.
41 minutes and 8 seconds on the clock. Hamilton, meanwhile, is... That last lap was a cool-down lap, and this lap as well appears to be going slowly, so maybe a double down.
We'll have to check the floor. I think it had some nasty hits on the curve.
Okay, understood. Which corner?
Exit of 5 and exit of 9.
Copy that.
Exit of 5 is one of the slowest corners on the circuit. Strange that it will be making noises in a slow corner. 9, I can understand, that's the banked corner, the revised bank corner at the end of the 2nd straight.
So that was Mick Schumacher on the radio. He's now in the pits, and the team will check the car over with 40 minutes and 20 seconds to go. Hamilton and Russell staying out there onto the circuit.
Turn 1's been a problem those last 2 laps.
IFM, some under rotations, even 5 and 6.
Lap. In fact, he's just come across the line to go 8th fastest, 1.5 seconds back from Verstappen on the mediums. And actually, while we're here, we've had a lot of chat about Daniel Ricciardo over the year and last year. And broadly speaking, my position is that it doesn't make any sense that he's this far off the pace of Norris. And some weekends he's, you know, there or thereabouts. And I really rate Daniel Ricciardo as a driver, and I don't think that's... my opinion sort of hasn't changed, because whatever's going on at McLaren is just weird.
For 2 years I can't work it out. Look, I was a McLaren driver and I had difficulties in 1980, but those were issues which are more about writing a biography, or sorry, an autobiography, than trying to explain it. There isn't enough time in the broadcast to go into it all. But I don't know why McLaren haven't been able to give, on a consistent level, a competitive car for Danny.
Would you like a front flap adjustment for the second push, Max?
No.
Does come free and could help tire temps as well, but if you're happy, you're happy. All good.
Or a bad car feels like he's told this is the car, drive it as quickly as you can, and he doesn't question it, and he does it successfully.
How much did you... Because I guess for you would in different cars just all the time, and especially and not but racing drivers of that era as well. It was a very different thing than being in your spec GP Formula 2 car and then into a McLaren, and that's all you drive. You know, how many? Yeah, I guess that's my question.
Well, what was the question?
Well,
actually?
My question was actually, you must have got used to driving different cars sort of all of the time, maybe even from one weekend to the other quite often, when you're sort of coming up and starting in F1, and you know, because even in your early years before McLaren, you'd driven for Penske and for like a one-off race for Lotus, and there was someone else in there as well, wasn't there?
I mean, I drove in my early part of my career for a private entry, a Hexagon Brabham,
oh, yeah, Hexagon,
then for John Surtees, then Roger Penske, then back to Brabham and the factory Brabham team, and then for 1979 until the conclusion of my career in 83 with the McLaren team. And in 79 and 80, the car hadn't progressed at the level of the ground effect technology that, let's say, Williams did, or Brabham did, or Ligier, or other teams. And it was really only when the new management and new engineerings came in 1981 with Ron Dennis and John Barnard that McLaren began to make that step forward, which they maintained for virtually 2 decades.
But in those early years, when you're jumping between different cars, you must have learned a lot about how to get different things out of different cars. That must have been a real tool, I suppose.
Well, the most challenging occasion I think I ever had was 1975, stepping in for Jackie Eakes, who...
So to George it's just 2/10, so it's a 10th in sector 1. To George, half a 10th in the middle, and you were just a couple of thousandths faster in the final.
The car FP1 drove around the little loop and then went out of the North Schleifer and it was an adventure. And Colin Chapman kept leaning into the cockpit and said, "What do you want to change, John? What do you want to change?" He said, "Leave me alone." It wasn't Kimi Räikkönen who'd invented that. "Leave me alone. Let me work it out myself."
That wasn't your first time on the Nordschleifer, though, was it?
First time on the Nordschleifer in a Lotus 72E.
Wow. 36 minutes and 34 seconds on the clock. Verstappen across the line, and he finds a bit more time. 1 minute 25.335. So chips away a couple of tenths on that second lap on the soft tyres. Leclerc is now out on track on the soft tyres. Jenny?
Yes, just in front of Mick Schumacher's car. The Haas is just about to go out on track. They've had to check the floor. He was saying he was getting some nasty hits on the straight. He's got a tribute helmet on this weekend for his last ever Formula 1 race with Haas. It's a tribute to Seb Vettel, so it's really confusing because you look at the Haas and think it's Seb Vettel. Oh no, it's not, it's Mick Schumacher. But just on the subject of Mick, if Ricciardo's going to Red Bull, that does potentially leave the way open for Mick to go to Merc. And my question about Ricciardo, should he have gone to Haas? Should he have taken the seat that Hülkenberg now has? Because if you're looking for experience and driver, then surely Ricciardo would be pretty much top of the list for any other team, no?
The only reason I can imagine is, with respect to the Haas team, and they've done a great job this year, is that Daniel Ricciardo felt that the option of going back to the Red Bull team was the preferable option than going into a race team which is yet to find itself at a higher level that he feels justify joining that team. So I think it's been a very rational judgment by Daniel Ricciardo, and probably a very good decision, albeit from Dr. Helmut Marko, who spilt the beans before there's any formal announcement from the team, an official announcement. So we are assuming that that comment by Marko stands as the official team acknowledgement that Ricciardo is returning as the third driver.
And I think also it creates a big future potential for Ricciardo if he's going back to the team, and I'm not saying to take over from Perez or anything like that, but just as a Red Bull athlete and the effort that Red Bull put into so many motorsport series and the amount of different opportunities that come from that, I think it's a really good place to be. You look at someone like Travis Pastrana, who not a Red Bull athlete anymore but was a Red Bull athlete, and he'd be doing all sorts. He'd be doing the Crandon World Cup, and then suddenly he's doing, which is like a sort of
all clear from behind. Charles lap time 25.6.
Stuff and all of that, and I think that's maybe an opportunity and an avenue that we could see Ricciardo doing. Right, some lap times coming in on the soft tyres now. Perez improved on his softs. He's half a second away from Verstappen, but Leclerc comes across the line now, and he's 2/10 away from Verstappen. So Verstappen quickest, Leclerc 2/10 slower. Here's Ricciardo's radio.
What's this patch in our grid box?
Yeah, there's a
slippery patch.
Yes, we think there is a slippery patch in the grid box. We are speaking to the FIA to see if anything can be done.
It's really bad. Yeah, I think that's what caught me out before.
So it looks like there's almost like a area of polished tarmac that is sort of right in the middle of Verstappen's grid box. Ricciardo's grid box. Are you there, Jenny?
I am, funnily.
From Miami.
It must be about, 3 metres by 4 metres, and it's directly as you come into the McLaren pit box, and it's very much a different surface. So it's all concrete down here, but then you get to this bit and it's kind of like a surface has been replaced and it's got a top on it, which has been painted, I think, whereas the rest of it is just concrete. So the FIA are just looking at it now. Joe Bauer, who's head of technical, is just to my left. He's calling one of the other FIA guys down to have a look as well, but he's absolutely right. It's a totally different surface to the rest of the entire pit lane. And it is slippy, and I mean, I don't know what they can do about it. They'll have to maybe ground it down overnight, but the FIA are clearly looking at it and will decide what to do.
Well, I noticed when Ricciardo came in, Jenny, that he had flat spotted his left front tyre. Now, I don't know whether he did that when he made a previous pit stop or on this entry into the pit lane.
So box Checo for flap adjust, we're going up 2 clicks, up to
32 minutes to go. So the order is Verstappen quickest, a quarter of a second ahead of Leclerc, half a second to Perez in third, 7/10 to Ocon in fourth, 8/10 to Sainz in fifth position. But we are now going to get a Russell lap. He's just coming through the final sequence of corners. There's an awful lot of traffic in the final couple of corners, which I think Gasly just got caught out by. Going 1.5 seconds slower than Verstappen in the final third of the lap alone. But here comes Russell now, and 16, and then he will get on his way, and we'll see what pace Mercedes have in these kind of qualifying simulations that we're getting into now. Nicholas Latifi in 15th comes across the line, doesn't improve, goes 2/10 slower than he managed previously. So the order at the moment: Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez, Ocon, Sainz and Bottas. So Ocon still in there doing an all right effort actually, but Russell is starting his lap now. Jenny?
Yeah, Charles Leclerc's just come in. They've just changed the wing angle slightly and sent him back out again. Simulated a pit stop, but didn't actually do a pit stop. And actually, as he went out, he drove over the McLaren pit box slightly, and a whole plume of dust flew up. So I don't know if he'll make the same complaint as Ricciardo.
Russell is quicker than Verstappen in sector 1. Coming down now into the chicane at turns 6 and 7. Halfway down that back straight, he's got a bit of traffic up ahead to contend with Russell. Has he backed off here? Just trying. He's coming on the power. We'll see him through the middle sector. It looks like he's backed off to me, but he's coming through the middle sector split now. And yeah, for some reason he's backed off at the chicane, so he's 5 seconds off at the middle sector. Didn't see any noticeable error from Russell or traffic or anything.
Well, he must have felt there was something on this lap which he wasn't going to be able to consult.
picked up a lot of understeer just from changing tyres. Might be what we're doing with
time differential has come from. So it's hypercritical. This racetrack has always been a difficult circuit to find a way around another car, and particularly when drivers are going out on outlaps, going really slowly in some cases, and at tricky parts of the circuit in other cases. So you've got to keep your wits in their eyes about you, thinking maybe a little bit further down part of that lap, would I catch maybe a car in sector 3 when I'm fully loaded, fully committed, and I've waited total lap because just somebody was meandering around in my way.
Verstappen's in the pits, Jenny.
Yes, he is, and they're working quite hard on the suspension, front suspension at the moment. So there's a mechanic on each wheel, just really holding it down as they try and get into the pedal box, as they try and balance up the car to make it a little bit more comfortable for Max Verstappen. So let's see how long he takes to get into the feel of it.
massively right into 5.
And he set the fastest first sector of anybody. We're just getting a replay of him down at turn... Oh, he had a big slide. And both through the middle of the corner and on the exit down at turn 5.
Yeah, he's on the red soft tyre, but the back of the car got away and he had to juggle that balance again, throttle and steering, just making sure not too much throttle, not too much steering input to keep the car pointing directly. Got a purple in sector 1, so he is continuing on whatever was his issue into coming up to the conclusion of sector 2 shortly. Purple sector 1. Jack?
Well, it's not purple anymore because Hamilton has just done purple in sector 1. Tense up on Verstappen through the first sector. Russell is pretty much matching Verstappen after the middle sector. Plenty of traffic in these sort of right-handers that lead up to the hotel. A big snap for Russell again as he comes underneath through the right-hander of turn 13. Well, Mercedes are looking very strong here. George Russell is just coming out of the final corner and he goes second fastest, a tenth slower than Max Verstappen, but he had a lot of traffic during that lap, and his teammate Lewis Hamilton's on a good lap as well, only 100th away from Verstappen after the middle sector. So once again, after that win in Brazil last week, Mercedes look like they're in the fight at the moment. 27 minutes to go in this session. There was a lot of traffic, wasn't there, for Russell in that last sector. Felt like it could have distracted him a little bit. Hamilton is coming into the final two corners now. Right-hander at turn 15, then onto the brakes from 7th gear down to 3rd. He has a little bit of turning oversteer as well, and he goes 4th, quickest in the end. Half a second, lost half a second in that final sector, Hamilton.
A lot of time to lose when you consider what Russell had to contend with. There was like 4 or 5 cars between turns 12 and coming through turn 16, and he managed still to do a sufficiently quick time to give him that provisional second quickest time. And in fact, Lewis, I don't know what happened to Lewis, but he seemed to lose the best part of just under 0.3 of a second between the middle of sector 2 and concluding the lap out of turn 16.
Yeah, it didn't look like there was too much drama in it. So Verstappen is quickest. Everyone's done a run on the soft tyre now. Verstappen is quickest, a tenth quicker than Russell, 2 tenths quicker than Leclerc, 4 tenths quicker than Hamilton, half a second quicker than Perez. Ocon is in 6th, Sainz in 7th, 8th for Bottas, 9th for Norris, 10th for Vettel. Joe, Tsunoda, Albon, Schumacher and Stroll are the top 15. Ricciardo, Gasly, Latifi, Alonso and Magnussen 20 drivers. So tell a lie, Alonso hasn't done a lap yet on the soft tyre, so he's doing it now. So I'll update you when he ends up in there. Sainz has just had some traffic. I think that was from Schumacher in the Haas.
Oh my god. Apologies for the traffic.
No problemo, as long as it's not there tomorrow.
A set of that softball tyre doesn't want to waste the best of the tyre. And again, look at the traffic coming through these 13 and 14.
No problemo, as long as it's not there tomorrow.
George Russell threads his way through successfully as he manages to come up, and this is the lap we're watching right now that will see Russell go second quickest.
Fernando Alonso is coming into the final sector now. His final race, of course, the Alpine team, as he comes underneath the hotel, then flicks it left and gets on power again, right up to the barriers on the exit. He's pushing here as Alonso. We'll see where this slots him. His teammate Esteban Ocon is currently 6th quickest. Alonso goes slightly slower than Ocon, but almost identical lap times, to be honest. they're separated by 5 thousandths of a second. So Ocon and Alonso 6th and 7th. Strong run for Alpine. Yellow flag in the middle sector, but it's gone immediately, so someone may be just skipping the chicane. But yeah, reasonable pace there for Alpine, who've done a good job. I think they've had a good year, Alpine, broadly speaking. Reliability's been bad, but the pace has been impressive at times.
I think that Alpine have found performance. They've just got to get then all the other elements to go with that performance. And right now, the pace that we're seeing from Ocon and Alonso has got to be a big worry for the McLaren, because they're the team that are fighting over 4th place in the Constructors' Championship. As we watch Sebastian Vettel just about trash a set of red sidewall Pirellis as he breaks down into the chicane. Oh, a big lock-up, and well, that's not an ideal way to start another flying lap on a set of the precious red sidewall tyres.
No, absolutely not. His teammate Lance Stroll jumps up into 13th place. Verstappen quickest though. Jenny?
Yeah, on Alpine, they're on 167 points at the moment. McLaren have slipped back to 148, so a 19-point gap is a big one to try and turn around in that Constructors' Championship fight. Seems almost impossible, but Lando Norris yesterday said, well, they will go for it as ever and see what they can get through the weekend. But, you know, we talk about, like, the fact that Red Bull have done a good job this year. They really have, but the fight from Mercedes never came and Ferrari's faltered. I feel it's almost similar with Alpine. They've done a decent enough job, and they're certainly rejuvenated from other years when they've been competing. It looks like and feels like a different organisation now. However, they've had so many reliability issues, and McLaren have had issues as well. So it's kind of like, it doesn't feel like either of them have won it. It feels like one of them has lost it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, I think the McLaren, the weakness McLaren has had is not having two drivers scoring consistently. Norris has done an excellent job in scoring the points, the bulk of the points.
Maybe I go. Battery is okay and traffic as well.
Yeah, so you should have a clear lap.
There was had both drivers been able to score at the level one would have assumed they would have done, they'd have been comfortably in 4th place in the Manufacturers' Championship.
Ricciardo has just done a good lap to go up into 9th place, pretty much matching the Alpines. So Ocon 7th, Alonso 8th, Ricciardo 9th, Norris in 11th position. Max Verstappen is coming through Sector 1 after being back into the pits, and he's over a 10th up on his personal best in Sector 1. Gets it into the apex very nicely. Bit of a slide on the power on the exit of Turn 5, but nothing too dramatic. And Verstappen is looking to chip away at his advantage a little more, but he's currently half a second ahead of Sergio Perez, and Carlos Sainz has done another lap, improved, but still 0.3 away from Charles Leclerc. But Verstappen driving very nice and calm and smooth. He comes through the chicane at turns 6 and 7 and 8.
When he's driving,
I don't like this tire, guys. I don't like this stuff. I want to do medium.
everything is the inputs into the steering. The way he picks up the throttle, the way he can balance the car, because he likes a car that's very, what I'd call a nosy car, really drives in the front end rather than on the middle or the back. He just guides the car through all these 6 corners and just has momentum through the entirety. And gone purple in that middle sector. It's going to be a quicker lap, I think, for Verstappen.
Here he comes into the final corner, the right-hander at turn 16 on the power again and across the line, and he does improve. Finds a couple of tenths of a second. Didn't improve in the final sector as those soft Pirellis go away a little, but still Verstappen improves now to be over 3 tenths clear of the rest of the field. Russell in second, Leclerc in third. Hamilton's improving. Here he comes through the final sector and he's finding much more time in this final sector. Comes across the line now, remains in 4th place, but a lot better in the final.
Should I go for him just for the outlap to charge the pack a bit because I'm quite low? Stand by.
Are we happy to stay away? Second in that final sector alone. Verstappen, as you say, likes a nosy car, but never looks like he's driving a nosy car, you know, because it's just so, he's never really fighting it. It's so smooth.
Some people like a car that's got a lot of performance on the front, and they drive that car. It's the way you load the front suspension and you get the nose and the tire, the front of the car working. Other drivers prefer the confidence, where the aerodynamic, let's just say the center of pressure of the aerodynamics is further back in the car, so they like to lean on the rear of the car, which gives you confidence. If you're a driver who relies on confidence, then you want a car that steers from the rear. if you're someone like Max Verstappen, who probably doesn't give it a second thought, give me the maximum performance out of the car from your wind tunnel testing and your modelling in the wind tunnel, I'll drive that car, which is what Max Verstappen does.
20 minutes on the clock in the second free practice session ahead of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Jenny Gow, myself, Jack Nicholls, and the 5-time Grand Prix winner John Watson with you for the coverage for these next 20 minutes. As I say, Hamilton improved, Russell's in the pits, Leclerc's in the pits. Verstappen is out on circuit. He's on a cool down, but we'll see whether it's going to be an in-lap. Everybody else is coming in lane. What does Verstappen do? Into the final two right-handers, and he stays out. So maybe another push lap incoming from Verstappen. Jenny.
Yeah, I think they're just about to bring Sergio Perez in, actually, because the team
No,
are ready.
I lied. Verstappen's come into the pits. Yeah, I lied.
Keeping on my toes.
Yeah.
I could have got run over if I was listening to what you were saying then, but luckily I didn't. Yes, Verstappen is now in the pits. So his helmet is awesome. It's like gold. Really, really gold. I know he's gone with that since he won the championship, but it's pretty cool. Talk about cool ways of doing the championship this year. Sebastian Vettel, we obviously know it's his last race weekend this weekend. He's had a very successful time, a 4-times world champion. Jack Nicholls, do you know how he is choosing to say goodbye to his friends in the paddock?
How Vettel is going to say goodbye to his friends in the paddock? Just saying cheerio?
Cheerio,
just going up in a little... Has he got maybe little model cars that he's handing out or something?
That would be fun, wouldn't it? No, he has decided that he'd like to run the track with everybody. So tomorrow, after qualifying, he has invited the whole of the paddock, including people like me, other drivers, other teams, doesn't matter who you are, to do a lap of the track tomorrow night at 9 o'clock.
Jenny, I've got a dodgy left ankle. Will you excuse me from doing that, please?
Okay, I'm very hard.
Excuse, don't worry. He's got a hashtag for it called Run with Seb. It does say one can walk, but I'll feel silly if I walk, won't I? I mean, I can't run. The doctor says no when I try and run, because my knee's not good enough to do it. But can I walk? Is that bad?
I'm not the king. I'm not in charge of the Run with Seb rules.
That's a shame. It's kind of a cool thing to do, no? Or no?
I don't quite understand it, honestly. I mean, I understand
it's a chance to catch up with his friends and
on a run?
Have a chat and
he must have 100 friends in the F1 paddock, so he's not going to make have a chat with them. It's only a 5k. They'll do a 5k in what? I don't know, 25 minutes.
Yeah.
So 25 minutes to say goodbye to all your friends in the paddock feels a bit. You've got to be making more of an effort than that. While you can't talk.
I guess that's the best position on track, no? If Gasly's slowing down, I'll try to overtake him.
Yeah, at the moment, yes. If not, behind the 3 cars behind you, there's a good gap also if you need it.
Cool. Or little autograph cards of himself. Yeah, I don't know. Did you say goodbye to the F1 paddock at any point, or not really? There was no big ceremony like this weekend for Vettel.
Well, at the end of 1983, I left Kailami, South Africa, flew back to the UK, and then on the Monday I found out that my seat has been taken by Alain Prost. So there was no opportunity, even if there'd been the will. And I have to say I doubt it. Because McLaren only looked forward at that time.
Yeah.
They could afford to look forward.
Yeah, absolutely. 16 minutes and 15 seconds to go. Russell's gone out on the medium tyre to start his long run. Leclerc's gone out on the medium tyre as well. Sainz has gone out on the softs at Ferrari. The sound you can hear is Sonoda coming through the... He's out on the hard tyres, I think. Yes.
Press marker button, back downshift, and 6. Worse than on the quali lap.
In the second half of the session. We did have a question, which I'm going to ask now. Simon Baker says it's a quick question, but it doesn't feel like it's going to be a quick answer. What was the difference in driving technique between a ground effect car like the McLaren from 81 and the Brabham fan car that you drove in Sweden in 1988? Did the fan car require different techniques?
Fundamentally, yes. It didn't have ground effects as at the time were in evolution. It had a fan acting as a sort of sucking down the race car. And the short story, the short answer is, in the paddock before we went out to practice, Bernie Eccleston leaned over the chassis into the cockpit and said, "Don't rev the engine, don't rev the engine." Because Bernie is quite short in stature, he had to push his feet under the monocoque. So he said, "Don't rev that." The chassis got sucked down, nipped Bernie's toes, and then I can't repeat when he said, "Don't rev that engine."
So 14 minutes and 45 seconds on the clock. That's great stuff. And Verstappen quickest. I'll give you the full order now. Alonso's done his lap time. Verstappen quickest, Russell second, Leclerc third, Hamilton fourth, Perez fifth, Sainz, Ocon, Alonso, Ricciardo and Bottas at the top 10. Norris, Vettel, Joe, Stroll, Tsunoda the top 15. Albon 16th. The two Haas cars, Schumacher and Magnussen, 17th and 18th. Gasly in 19th place. His quickest lap came on the medium tyre though, so not quite sure what's been going on with Gasly in this session. He's on the softs now, but hasn't improved.
C-rate's out massive at the moment.
That's George Russell on the radio. Alonso's gone out on the soft tyres. Ocon's on the mediums. So quite a lot of teams.
C-rate's out.
He'll go out on the softs or the mediums, but a fairly abrasive track surface in Abu Dhabi, made the same as Bahrain, same asphalt from a quarry mine.
Yeah, no,
in Shropshire.
I've got a scale of 1 to 5 in terms of asphalt grip coming from Pirelli. They say it's around about 2, so it's got an abrasive component, but it's not as maybe as abrasive as other circuits on the calendar. But you know, drivers are opting now to run on the medium, the yellow sidewall tire. This is more work for Sunday rather than for tomorrow evening, because tomorrow evening in qualifying it's all about red to get the maximum performance out of your package.
Yeah, I think that we won't see any more improvements this session unless Pierre Gasly does something. What's he just done? It looks like he's on a long run, so he must have...
And Kev, please check your pit board during this run. Please check your pit board during this run.
I wonder if Lewis Hamilton was having some DRS issues when he was out on track. I don't know that for sure. I'll try and find out from the team. They're unlikely to tell me, in all honesty. But they are fiddling around with the rear wing. He's in the garage and the mechanics are kind of poring over it. Peter Bonington is also looking at what's going on. I think they're probably quite keen to get Hamilton back out again, but at the moment there's still work being done to that rear wing, although they are starting to get the tyres out already. So 1-2 tyres heading towards Hamilton's car. I will try and work out which ones they are. They've still got the little tyre blankets on them that they're threatening to get rid of, and the drivers don't want them to go. What is it going to be? It looks like a yellow banded. I'm not 100% sure. They're not lifting off the tyre blanket enough for me to check.
Just go lift it off yourself.
Yeah, yellow mediums.
Okay.
I'm not going in that garage and touching the car or the tyre blankets, just as a, by the way, but thanks.
But that's interesting, both Mercedes going out on the mediums, because Red Bull split their strategy with Leclerc on the mediums and Sainz on the softs. Alpine have done the same. Haven't seen yet what Red Bull are going to be getting up to, because they haven't left the pits. Verstappen's just left the pits now, so he's on a set of mediums, and Perez is out on mediums too, so it's only Carlos Sainz who is out on the softs, but even then he's just come back into the pit lane. So 11 minutes and 23 seconds on the clock. Leclerc went off at turn 6 on that last lap.
Yes, he came down, turned the wheel, and not really very much response. So maybe having been accustomed to the level of grip at the point he was turning in on the previous set of red sidewall tyres, the yellows didn't respect that command from the steering wheel, and he ran wide. In fact, he had to cut across the inside of the turn 6 and 7 and abandoned again that particular lap.
Leclerc comes out across the line. Hamilton's still in the pits and Ricciardo's still in the pits. Those are the only two drivers that are remaining in the pit lane at the moment, with 10 minutes and 45 seconds to go as everybody goes out to do their long runs. We'll be seeing Hamilton out sooner rather than later. Mattia Binotto on the pit wall at Ferrari. A lot of chat this week, John, about Fred Vasseur maybe coming in and all those rumours, and reported by Gazzetta dello Sport in Italy. It feels like changing the to me, it feels like a changing of the manager at Ferrari is only going to work if they have, I don't know, not ultimate power, but sort of they need to, you know, root and branch change, or whatever phrase you want to use, in the way that Jean Todt in the 90s came in and just changed the whole place around. He wasn't just a different, you know, figurehead. He seemed to change the whole company, or the whole race team anyway.
Well, Jean Todt brought in Michael Schumacher, brought in Ross Brown, brought in Rory Byrne. So his support team, both technical and from a driving perspective, was just, well, went on to win 5 unchallenged World Championships. Ferrari is in that situation. There has been a mention of a couple of people as replacements for Matteo Binotto. Personally, I don't think either would do a better job than Binotto, but obviously there's work to be done, that Ferrari are failing to achieve the standard of operations, let's put it that way, that both Mercedes and in particular Red Bull have shown this year. So they need to smarten up their actual act. I don't know what the fundamental problems are, but they are solvable. But I don't think changing a key person is going to be the answer.
Just getting a replay of Sainz coming into the pit lane for a practice pit stop, and
yeah, check the mechanic is okay, yeah? He had the hand over the tire, I think.
Everybody's okay.
Checking because the mechanic had his hand still on the front right tyre as Sainz pulled away, just as we're talking about operational operations at Ferrari. What did you make of it when, you know, when you look in the pit lane in Brazil qualifying and Leclerc's on the intermediates and everybody else is on the dries? It's just a bit, it's wild, isn't it?
Well, there's an expression that everybody's out of step except our Willie. If the majority of the runners are running on one set of tyres, the red sidewall, why would you want to go out in a different? I mean, that's the illogical rationale, if you call it. That's not a contradiction in terms. I just don't understand some of the decisions that we have seen from Ferrari. Remember, they're not just making the decisions from the pit wall. There's a team of people back at Maranello who are working in conjunction with the pit wall. So how... Well, those are the things that need to be thought through and corrected, because they're losing points. They're bleeding points away to their competitors.
Yeah, absolutely. Verstappen coming through the middle sector now. Hamilton's still in the, he's just done an outlap now on those medium tyres. So Sainz has gone back out on the mediums, by the way, also. So I think that is suggesting that the mediums is going to be what everybody wants to start on for the Grand Prix tomorrow, rather on Sunday, you would suggest, because there's not a lot of long running going on the soft tyres. Daniel Ricciardo still the only driver in the pits, done 11 laps, so less than half of a lot of the drivers out there, like Carlos Sainz, who's done 24 laps, and Albon, who's done 22. So with less than 7 minutes to go, it does look as though the medium is going to be the tyre of choice at the moment. Verstappen up through turns 1, 2 and 3. A reminder, he's quickest, 3 tenths ahead of George Russell, who's second quickest, 4 tenths ahead of Leclerc, 6 tenths ahead of Hamilton, 7 tenths ahead of Perez. News on Hamilton, Jenny Gao.
Yeah, so I found out what they were doing with the wing. It was they changed the rear wing flap for more downforce. So obviously Lewis Hamilton not 100% happy with that car at the moment. So that's what they've been doing.
Okay, makes sense.
It only makes sense if the wing change gives added performance. If it ends up having more drag and offsetting any potential lap time gain, then you have to rethink what you've chosen to do.
6 minutes and 5 seconds on the clock. As I say, Ricciardo in the pits. Gasly's come back into the pits now, and he did do that 14-lap run on the soft tyres. He's just left the pit lane again now on the medium, so he's going to run the opposite tyre for now. And still Ocon and Alonso, still the only two drivers who are, or the only team I should say, who are sticking with this medium and soft split. Everybody else, and Alpine as well. Sorry, Aston Martin as well. Alpine and Aston Martin, the two that are doing this split. Norris is running the hards and Bottas is running the hards as well, as everybody tries to get as much information as possible. The other problem you can get is you get stuck behind a car, and that's what's happened to Hamilton at the moment. He's right up behind Zhou Guanyu in the Alfa Romeo as he comes down the back straight, opens the DRS, looks to the inside and has to get the job done on the brakes, but does so, and then continues on around his way. Leclerc has been off at turn 6 on that last lap, the lap before last actually, so Leclerc, that's the second time today, off at turn 6, having a little bit of a lock-up and going straight over. But it's quite a big field spread from Verstappen down to Sainz, 0.8 of a second, separating those top 6 on the quick qualifying runs, which is bigger than I would have expected and bigger than we've seen. We've seen so many less than 1/10 of a second splits this year. Yes,
and what's impressive is that Verstappen didn't do FP1. He's jumped in stone cold and gone out and done what he's done pretty much throughout the season. That's dominate a session.
7/10 quicker than his teammate Sergio Perez. Here's Charles Leclerc's radio.
Why are we slow? I mean, are we slow compared to the other guys or somehow?
Our pace is not great at the moment.
Lock up for Leclerc again, coming into turn 6. That's 3 laps now on this long run that he's had that little lock up, and Leclerc saying on the radio, are we slow? Well, only one way to...
8 seconds, so pace is similar to last race, slightly slower than Mercedes and Red Bull, around 2/10.
Work a third time, I think you go back in the pit lane and ask the question.
Yeah, frustrating times for Charles Leclerc. Third quickest at the moment, but I wonder what the number is.
Jack!
Yeah?
It's 3 minutes to 2, which can only mean one thing. So for the last time this season, it's time for...
Long Run Corner with Andrew Benson.
Well, we don't have a lot of data. Drivers have been out at different times, but and they've done different lengths of runs. But to compare equivalent 4-lap runs, Max Verstappen is 0.3 of a second quicker than George Russell, who is half a second quicker than Charles Leclerc. Hamilton's only done 2 laps, so hang on, I've just got another data point for him. I'll just add that one into the spreadsheet. Hamilton about the same pace as Russell, so at the moment it looks like Red Bull have quite a significant advantage on race pace, just as they have done qualifying pace.
Half a second for Ferrari. No wonder, because I was wondering, because when Leclerc's saying, are we slow?
Half a second off Mercedes, who were 0.3 off Red Bull.
Yeah, so that's, and the fact that the engineer came on and said, yeah, we're quite slow at the moment, that's concerning for Ferrari, isn't it?
Yeah, he wasn't joking, was he? It's not great. Still, to be fair, Sainz's first lap's not too bad. He did his first lap was a 1 minute 30.299 seconds, which compares with Verstappen's first lap of 1 minute 30.108, and Hamilton's fastest lap of 1 minute 30.3.
Special clean to try a solid amount of aero balance on the next tyre, just as an indication.
Yeah, copy. Plus 4 click.
Wow. So, kind of normal service resumed by the looks of things. Verstappen with a bit of an edge over the Mercedes, but the Ferrari's a long way off.
Verstappen very normally is. They've got to focus on Perez, and there's a problem, just a freezing picture. They've got to focus on getting Sergio Perez ahead of the 2 Ferraris, particularly of Charles Leclerc. And Leclerc right now in this session is 0.2 or so ahead of Perez. There's work to be done, and that's second Red Bull.
Yeah, because that is the fight for second in the championship between Leclerc and Perez for whatever that's worth. Are you surprised how, I don't know, sort of seriously that the teams are taking that fight for second in the championship, or do you think it does mean something?
I think it means a lot to a team to have both drivers first and second in the Drivers' Championship. It doesn't represent any financial gain to the team, but it's an important, if you want to call it, marketing tool to be able to go to a sponsor, for example, and say, well, we have got the first and second drivers in the World Championship. We are the team that you should be investing in. And I assume that's the part of the benefit that a team would derive.
Where did you finish in 1982? in the championship?
Well, it was the same number of points as Didier Pironi, but Didier had won, I think, 3 races to my 2. So he was then by the FIA, as would be the case of Leclerc and Perez. So I ended up equal in points, but ended up classified 3rd. And Pironi ended up 2nd.
And would you rather have been? Does it matter to you that you're not 2nd, or it doesn't matter because you weren't the champion? 2nd or 3rd is irrelevant.
I'd rather have been 1st.
Yeah, exactly.
Except for an unbelievable performing Tyrrell with Michele Alboreto in Las Vegas.
The view rates I'm having are massive, like losing so much in the straights.
Checker flag is out. Jenny Gao.
Yeah, just a quick update on Ricciardo. He's only done 12 laps. He's just headed back out on circuit, but the team have been managing a small oil leak on his car. So, as I said, 12 laps compared to others who have done, well, nearly 30.
Yeah, frustration there for Daniel Ricciardo then, as the checker flag, he's already taken the checker flag actually as well. So, Max Verstappen ends the session fastest, a 1:25.146 despite missing out on practice earlier on today. Second quickest for George Russell, 0.3 of a second behind. Charles Leclerc 3rd, 4/10 back. Fourth is Hamilton, 6/10 back from Verstappen. Perez in 5th, Sainz in 6th. Then it's the 2 Alpines of Ocon and Alonso ahead of Ricciardo in 9th and Valtteri Bottas completing the top 10 in the Alfa Romeo. Norris, Vettel, Zhou, Stroll and Tsunoda the top 15. And then Albon, Schumacher, Magnussen, Gasly and Latifi, the 20 drivers, Jenny.
That is Friday, done and dusted then from Abu Dhabi with free practice 1 earlier on today. George Russell fastest and Lewis Hamilton fastest, George Russell 2nd. In this session, it's Max Verstappen fastest and Russell 2nd. So, John Watson is qualifying tomorrow. As you pointed out several times in this broadcast already across the day, it's so important to nail your position in qualifying when it comes to Abu Dhabi because it's still a tough track to overtake on. So, how do you see it shaking out?
Well, from what I've seen in this FP2 session, there's one driver who will be on pole position. I don't see any other driver, package driver, whatever, challenging the Dutchman, the 2-time world champion, and he is performing as we've seen him perform all year, which is superlatively.
Jack?
Look, there's no choices there. I think that he's ended up being sort of exactly where you thought he might be after the first practice session, you know, because he wasn't in it, and it was Russell. You know, it was the Mercedes and the Ferraris really close at the top of the times with no Verstappen. You slot Verstappen in 3/10 ahead, and there we go. Perez a long way off. I think they need to find something, as what he was saying a moment ago, to try and get ahead of Leclerc in that fight for second in the championship. But based on today's evidence, it'll be a Verstappen on pole, and maybe Mercedes will be the closest challenger.
The TV director was a little bit mischievous, I believe, because he showed a picture after Ferrari were chatting about being slow. They showed a picture of Fred Vasseur, the team principal.
Yeah, that was quite funny.
You clocked that as well. The team principal down at Alfa Romeo. He is the man being linked with a move across to...
It's normal. Anytime I have a bit of this year, or want to push a bit more than I know I can do. It's going so fast. We're missing about, I would say, 3 turns. That's where we should be. And it feels good to start the run, but it's obviously just the front gives up, especially that front left.
Italian media, they just absolutely hammer Ferrari if they're not winning, and if they see it, what they perceive as a weakness in the team, they are going to flog it to death. And if the outcome of it is that pressure leads to a change at the top, at the head of the Ferrari team, well, I made a point earlier on, I'm not persuaded that the 2 names that have been put forward as potential replacements would make any appreciable difference to the success of Ferrari in 23.
And that's what we've discussed before, isn't it? Yeah, okay, and you spoke about it well on the Checker Flag podcast, which you can download from last night.
Okay, Lance, we'll be doing a pit stop, so go 1 for brake balance, box, attack the entry, stop on the marks, static pit stop and engine off.
You know, changes need to happen somewhere, but I feel like we've been saying that for 10 years.
Right, that is all for Friday night. However, if you want a bit more F1 action, then make sure you search on your podcast device or BBC Sounds for Spygate, because we have a new podcast coming your way all about the 2007 series, narrated by Pete Tong. So that'll give you something to listen to. We will be back tomorrow at 2 o'clock for qualifying FP3 before that. Join us then. This has been